So you'll remember a couple of... oh, fucking hell. So you remember a couple of weeks ago I was telling a travel story and how I'd got to Gibraltar eventually after loads of false starts, and I was always in the wrong place and I couldn't get ahead and it was a real struggle. Well, this week we'll catch up with that story and we'll find out how I did eventually get ahead. But there was a whole lot of struggle and a whole bunch of mistakes, adventures, let's say, in between where we are in the story and where we'll be at the end of this video. So hang on to your hats. My name is Chris and this is the Gnomecast. So where were we at? Gibraltar. The boys have gone to South Africa in the boat. I'm wondering what to do. I've got nowhere to live now. Not making a lot of money, keeping my head above water, but still struggling a little bit. And I kind of just crashed on people's couches and stuff for the next few weeks. The people who owned the place I was working at owned a couple of other places, and they had a bunch of itinerant workers, people like me. One of them had an apartment, so we all kind of made friends and looked after each other a little bit. But I was really just marking time. There was no future in this, and I got a bit bored. And eventually I thought, I've got a bit of cash, and I went to Morocco for just a few weeks, just basically waiting until I thought the weather was going to be good enough in Europe. And then I decided to fulfill a dream that I'd had for years, but I'd never been able to justify the time and the break in my real life. And that was to go and work in a bar in Greece. So I got the boat back from Morocco to Spain, and then I put my thumb out and I hitchhiked all the way up the coast of Spain and then all the way across the south coast of France and then all the way down through Italy, and then I caught another boat and eventually landed on the island of Corfu in Greece. And it took me at least a week to get there, maybe 2 weeks, I don't know. I remember the hitchhiking was really difficult and I'd started out with not much money. So would you be surprised to learn that I arrived in a strange town with nothing more than the bag on my back and a few quid in my pocket, basically no money. And I ended up in some little tourist town, walking down the high street and knocking on every single door of all the restaurants and the bars and the clubs and everything, looking for a job. And the reply was always the same. Sorry mate, you're too soon. The season doesn't start for another month before it even starts, and then it's another month before it gets busy. So I was kind of stuck, and I ended up kind of pleading and saying, look, I'll work for food and money. And this is totally the wrong way to go about international travel. There are organizations now that people use to go and work on work exchanges, where you stay in somebody's house or on their farm or whatever, and you work 25 hours a week and you get bed and food, and it's not that it's exploitative, it's a tremendous waste of your time, because you could be working and earning money and paying rent and saving up more money if you've got your head together, which I didn't at that point. So I ended up working, helping some. They had a restaurant and they had some accommodation units that were rented out to a holiday company over the summer, and they were getting everything ready for the season. So there was work to do, and it was pleasant enough. It was a nice place. And then one of the big bar down the road opened up, and I kept going back every few days. And the boss said to me, he said, look, I don't need anybody now. We're opening on Thursday. Come to the bar, have a few drinks, and I'll be watching you. I'm going to see how you get along with people. If you can make fun, then I might have a place for you when it gets busier. And I'm like, dude, I have no money. I can't afford to come and drink in your bar every night on the off chance that I'm going to entertain people enough that you'll hire me. And he said, no, it's all free. Yeah, and at that point in my life, free alcohol. Come to the pub and have a laugh. These are your instructions. Like, fucking A, yes. So I did. And I started hanging out in this pub, and the guests started to arrive. The summer season was slowly starting. People were coming in. And then one night, it was about 1 o'clock in the morning, and I was sitting in the bar with my arm around some girl, being sociable and happy. The boss came over and he said, "Chris, you start now." I thought, "Oh, and he said, "Look, we need to talk to you about the drinking." "Yeah, okay." He said, "Look, all these people, they're coming away, they get 1 week, 2 weeks, they want to have a good time, they want to have fun, and it's not going to work if you're this kind of serious, sober guy standing behind the bar. You need to, when you come to work, get a bit of a buzz on, make fun." That was his phrase, make fun, make happy. And I thought, well, okay, I can do that. So I think I was sleeping on somebody's couch, and I was getting paid a little bit of money, and I was allowed to drink just the local stuff. I couldn't drink the expensive stuff, but I could drink as much of the local stuff as I could handle and chase girls. And it really was, a marvelous experience. This is one of those things that a lot of people want to go and do because it looks great, and they never make a space in their life to go and do it. And I did. And the thing about the chasing girls is, you're the local guy, but you're not the local guy. You're a bit like us, but you're living here and you're working behind a bar, and you know all the cool places to go, and you know where to get cheap drinks. And I could just walk up to a girl and say, "Hi, if I buy you a couple of cocktails, you two, will you come and get on the bar with me and dance? Wave your arms in the air." And they'd always go like, "Oh yeah, okay." And this is 7 o'clock in the evening. This is not late at night. This is to bring people in. It's to make the place start pumping. So it was like I had a license to talk to everybody, and nobody knows who you are or what your history was. And I went from being the guy who'd left England under a cloud, the guy who'd fucked up his life, the kind of depressed, scrabbling, no money, to still no money, but now everybody in town knew me. All of the guests, all the tourists in the town knew who I was. I would walk down the street and there'd be this constant like, "Hi Chris, hi Chris." It was amazing. And I was leaving behind all that shit that I'd run away from. I remember when I was in France, first at the beginning of my escape life, and I was talking to somebody about why I'd left the UK, and they were going, "Oh, could you do that? And how about you try this? And what about..." And I would be explaining the reasons why I'd tried that, and it didn't work, and blah, blah, blah. And I realized I was carrying this baggage, this problem with me, and I needed to just leave it behind and stop talking about it. And that bar in Greece is where that happened. And I became Mr. Charisma. You know, you could just like ching, 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 turn it up and have a great old time, and everybody loved me. And at the same time, your past follows you. Your past haunts you. I was talking to a guy in the bar one night, and I recognized his accent, and I asked him where he was from, and I said, "Oh, you know, I think my brother lives there." And we talked a little bit, and it turned out that he drank in a pub where my brother works behind the bar. So there's me, run away from my whole life, and now there's this guy who knows my family. And then I was talking to a couple of ladies one day, you know, the Blue Rinse Brigade, the old ladies, very nice. And they were chatting, and they were asking where else I'd travelled to, and I mentioned Gibraltar. And one of them said, "Oh, my son works in Gibraltar. Yeah, he runs a pub." This was my boss. I was sitting there drinking with the mother of my boss in my previous job. And you don't leave this stuff behind. And then, you know, the local guys, we used to early evening, once a week, twice a week, was transfer day. And that was when there were busloads of people arriving that had just got off an aeroplane from England, and the reps would shunt them off to their different accommodations, and then the bus would go away and take the next group to the next little town. And we would always just sit and look for fresh meat, basically. I remember one of my German friends saying, "Oh, kommt Fleisch, here comes the meat." So we're sitting there, and then as the bus turns around to drive away, there's this guy in the bus banging on the window and waving like, and I thought, very strange. And a few days later, he turned up in my bar looking for me, because he'd guessed that I was going to be working, and he'd recognised me and wanted to come and talk to me. I hadn't got a clue who he was, but he was part of the crowd in Germany from, 6 months before in Leipzig. One of the ones that had to go home with no money, tail between his legs, same as me. And now here he was on holiday with his family before he went back to Germany for another summer season. And I wasn't this guy that he kind of resented because I was in with the Germans, like it was at the time. Now, in his memory, I was this guy that had shown up under his own power and negotiated his own job and kind of been master of his own destiny. And the fact that I was now working in a bar in Greece where you get a bit of money and free booze and all the girls you can eat, he thought I was the dog's bollocks. I was just like this hero guy. And it kind of not changed my perception of myself, but it gave me a new perspective. It gave me a new way of looking at my world, my life, myself. And it also reminded me that I needed to get the fuck back to Germany. So, why did I need to go back to Germany? 3 reasons. Reason number 1, I was doing half a bottle of brandy a night. Reason number 2, I'd met this lovely, gorgeous girl that was living and working in Switzerland, and she wanted to travel in Indonesia in the winter, like 6 months in advance from this point. And I was kind of smitten and all over this plan. And reason number 3, I wasn't putting any money in the bank to get me through the winter. So this was a marvellous adventure. I think I was there 3 months. And at the end of that, no, it's time to head off. So I got the boat back to Italy, and then I put my thumb out and I hitchhiked all the way up through Italy, across Austria and into Germany. And then I pulled out my little book and I found a phone number of a guy that I'd met in Morocco that had said, well, if you're ever in Germany and you pass him through, give me a call and come and stay for a few days. So I was sleeping on somebody's couch, and he was a really interesting guy. He was an artist living out in the countryside, and he was building a hydroelectric power station in his garden, which was pretty mad. But there was loads to do. I kind of worked with him a little bit, and in the meantime I was using the phone, calling these agencies in the Netherlands looking for that job in Germany. And eventually the phone rang, and it's, yep, you've got to start, you need to be in Berlin tomorrow. So, put my thumb out again and headed for the bright lights of Berlin. And the job was a bit of a disaster. The German contractors, the workers, didn't really want a bunch of English guys coming on site. So they were a little bit hostile, looking for problems. And then I was one of the first ones to arrive, and in the next few days, the next week, there were several chances. So the quality of work that we as a group, because we were judged as a group, the quality of work was just not there. The job finished, we all got kicked out. I think I got maybe a half a week's pay, I don't remember. What I do remember is this bunch of unhappy Englishmen all standing there, blah, 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 blah. And then one of them looks at me and goes, right, Chris, you speak German, get us a job. And I didn't have a mobile phone at the time. I remember one of the guys had his mobile phone and it worked even though he wasn't in England, which was kind of rare at the time. We didn't have international roaming, really. So everybody chipped in a little bit of money, and I bought a debit card to use in a telephone box, and I stood in that telephone box for like 2 days, going through the yellow pages, calling painting contractors, Ja, hallo, hier ist Herr Gray, ich komme aus England, ich habe 7 Maler hier, wir suchen Arbeit ab sofort, wir haben alle Papierien, blah, 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 blah. You know, I'm looking for work, I've got a bunch of painters here, we're ready to start now. And I remember we went to look at a couple of jobs. Like, one of the guys had a car, there were a couple of the guys that I was working with that were actually pretty good. And I kind of latched onto them, and they were really glad to have me with them because I was the guy who spoke the language a little bit. And we went driving around to look at different jobs that were being offered. And in one of them, we met a couple more English guys that had been there a week and they hadn't been paid and they were really stressed and unhappy. And they seemed like they were pretty clued up as well and good at their job. And I thought, okay, maybe I need to like get these guys into my team as well, because there's never a job for one person. They always need 5 or 10. And they told me afterwards that they'd kind of figured that they needed to get me away from the losers that were hanging on to me and just get me and my couple of, you know, good painters, and then we'd be one group. So I hung out with them, and eventually we did find a job and we got to work, and it was Berlin City Hall. The Altes Stadthaus, the red city hall, and all of the windows, thousands of windows, needed to be renovated. You need to remove all the paintwork, get them down to the bare wood, and then put 3-4 coats of paint. And these windows were, you know, humongous, and there were hundreds of them. There was work for months and months for a big team of guys. And we arrived on the job, and the boss was a little bit unsure about what paperwork we needed, but he wanted to be legal. And somehow he trusted me, and I came up with some bullshit, and I don't remember what paper we used, but it was an A4 paper with an official stamp on it, and, you know, no photograph or nothing, and it was a little bit dodgy. But anyway, we ended up, one of the guys had this piece of paper, and we took it down to a print shop, made a copy, tidied it up, and then we were able to make new ones for everybody else. So then we were all checked in, stamped in, and put to work. And I was the guy that they would communicate with if there were any questions, because I was the only one who spoke any German at all. And then like the next day, there's 2 lads standing outside, and I get taken to go and deal with them and make sure they've got the right paperwork. So I would take them off to the print shop and forge some documents and bring them back and hand them to the secretary, who now has decided that she can trust me, and she would just go, oh, okay, thank you. Stampy, stampy. And we were all good. And this carried on, and more people would arrive. And then they would expect me to tell them what the work was and where the tools were. And I was like, I couldn't get anything done. I couldn't do any of my own work. And after about a week, the boss just said to me, no, it's okay, don't do any work, just supervise. So now I was running this job. And after about a month, I had 30 men working for me on this construction site, and I am the world's worst manager. Published a book a couple of years ago. I even talked about this incident where, you know, I was in charge of all these people. I didn't know what the hell I was doing, and I really screwed it up. And somebody, one of my friends, argued with me and gave me basically a slap and put me right, and I realized that I needed to be smarter about it, and I became a better boss, a better manager. So that was a good experience. And then the money problems started. We were having trouble getting paid. I remember talking to the agent on the phone, and he was saying, yeah, I'm getting a bad taste in my mouth about this one now. And I have a runner. There's a guy that comes around. He comes to collect the money from the Germans and bring it to the site to pay everybody. And he came to the site one day, and he was like, yeah, you know, I was supposed to see the guy this morning, but he wasn't there. I'm going back this afternoon. I said, right, I'm coming with you, because I've got 30 angry men who are all expecting me to sort it out. So we jumped in the car and drove 45 minutes out to this guy's office on the edge of Berlin. And I stayed in the car while the runner went into the office. I sat waiting, just, you know, thinking it through. What do I do if he comes back without the money? And he came out, and he just had this kind of hangdog, unhappy expression on his face, and he sat in the car next to me, and he said, there's no money. And I was so wound up. I just said, right, fuck this. And I jumped out of the car and I start walking in. And I don't know what I would have done. I'm not a big guy and I'm not violent. I'm not used to violence. But there was no way I was going to let this guy just fob me off. And the runner came running after him going, no, I'm joking. And he had a bar check, they call it, a banker's draft. So we went to the bank and we cashed the check and we got all the money. And then we went to the site and everybody got paid. So that was good, but it was getting scary. And everybody was looking for other work. And eventually, me and my crew, 5 of us, all, maybe 2 cars, I don't remember, might have been more than 5. But anyway, we set off and we went to some little town out in the wilderness somewhere and worked on it was a shopping mall. There's all kinds of interesting work there. I spent a week in an underground car park. It had been painted beautiful white throughout. My job was to do the black and yellow stripes on all of the posts and the beams and so on, so that nobody crashed into them. I spent a week doing that. And eventually I got paid and the weather was closing in and it was time for me to go off to Indonesia with my beloved girl who had visited me several times while I was working in Germany. And, to be honest, we'd only known each other a week in Greece and just kind of, when you get this obsession, we were just in love. But after 3 visits, I think it was, the feeling had gone. And she'd already bought her ticket, I think, before she even met me. So then I bought my ticket separately, and we were on slightly different days, 1 or 2 days difference. But I had a ticket to Indonesia. And I've got this fucking girlfriend saying, you're a really lovely guy. I really enjoy having you as my friend. And I hope we can travel together as friends. And I'm like, no, I'm a sex maniac. I love girls. This is not going to work. So eventually I had to get on an aeroplane to Indonesia because I'd already bought the ticket and my job had finished. I got nothing else to do. But I had a pocket full of cash because I'd got my shit together over the summer.